Okay, well, welcome to our training session on outcomes and assessment for newbies and refresher. We're delighted to have you with us today. My name is Linda Scoletti. This is my colleague, Michelle Wadley. Together, we are the Institutional Effectiveness Department here at Central Carolina. We want to welcome all of our remote viewers, those of you out there watching from your office, live on the web live stream. We're glad you could join us today. And let's just jump in and get started. So Dave, you want to switch over to this screen? So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what is outcomes assessment? Why do we do outcomes assessment? Why is it important? And how do we handle that in our content management system, which is Compliance Assist? So let's jump in and get started. Outcomes and assessment is pretty simple. It boils down to, it's a little different for curriculum programs than for service areas. For curriculum programs, outcomes and assessment boils down to asking, what is it that our students really need to learn? What is it really important that they need to know how to do when they leave and graduate and go out either to the four-year university or they go into their careers? And are they learning those things? How do we know that? And how can we use that data and that information to improve future learning? Why is this important? Let's think about that for a minute. If you're a service area, rather than asking what do our students need to learn, outcomes and assessment asks, how does my department support the college community so students can learn? Are we doing that? And how can we use that information to improve future service? So we think about why this is important, and this is why it's important. It's for all those beautiful smiling faces at the graduation, all those students who have high hopes and they're embarking on a new life, a new career, thanks to all the wonderful education they got here at Central Carolina Community College. And I know that we're all united in that goal. You look at the joy and the love and the pride on the faces of the faculty and staff at graduation, and you can see how much all of us care about making sure that the students get what they need. And outcomes and assessment is a way that we can do that. It's a way that helps us zero in on and focus in on specific competencies that our students need to learn and figure out how to improve student success on those competencies. And I like to use the analogy of the starfish story. It's about the little boy who's walking along the beach, picking up starfish, and there are thousands of starfish beached on the sand. They're dying because they need to be in the water. And one by one, he's throwing them back into the water. And a man comes along and he says, what are you doing? There's thousands of starfish here and miles of beach. You can't possibly make a difference. And the little boy throws another starfish in. He says, well, I made a difference to that one, didn't I? So outcomes and assessment is really about making a difference one student at a time. You know, the primary relationship here at the college is between the student and the teacher, but that relationship it cannot take place without the foundation of support provided by all the service areas. You know, the student services, the marketing and recruiting and information services, the financial and business services, like food and books and groundskeeping, computer information technology, library, institutional effectiveness, and then academic assistance and campus security. We all have a role to play in supporting that primary relationship between the student and the teacher. So it really takes all of us. And how do we measure success? Well, we set goals for ourselves in our programs and our students and our departments. And goals are broad, overarching concepts that they're really too broad to be measurable. And when you look at individual student learning competencies, those are called outcomes. So one broad goal would have many outcomes, or student learning outcomes that fall under it. And the key distinction to outcomes is that they are measurable. There's something that we could actually measure. And if we're going to measure something, we have to have a tool to do that, and that's what we call an assessment or an assessment instrument. A target is something that we set as a benchmark to say what we're aiming for. We were aiming for 80% of our students to score 75% or better on this particular competency, or however you want to set that. It's really up to you and your expertise to set those targets. We measure the results, and then the most important part is that we use the data that we collect when we measure the results to plan future improvements, and we affectionately refer to that as closing the loop. So here is an example of why this is important. Here's an outcome that's straight from the Vet Med Tech student learning outcome list, and it's calculate dosages for medications. A very similar outcome also appears in the associate degree nursing list, and also the practical nursing list, and also maybe the medical assisting list. And you think we get caught up every day in our day-to-day activities and teaching our students and so forth that we might not remember how important these things are to get them correct. And this brings me to a story of this baby is actually my daughter, Sarah. And when she was about a year old, when this picture was taken, she got very sick, and I took her to the pediatrician. Pediatrician prescribed a medicine, and then the pediatrician said, we've got a wonderful new service. You can fill your prescription right here at the pediatrician's office. You don't even have to stop at the drugstore on the way home. We can take care of that for you. It's a new service here. Our nurses take care of that. I said, sign me up. That sounds great. I saved myself a stop on the way home. So the nurse measured up the medication and gave me the bottle, and I went home and I looked at it, looked at the label, and looked at everything. And I thought, this doesn't look right, and it wasn't right. Fortunately, I'm an engineer by trade. I'm good at metric conversions, because what the nurse had actually done was overdose my 1-year-old baby by a factor of 10. She had concentrated the medication at 10 times what it should have been. But might have killed my daughter. And it really haunts me to think about mothers who take their babies to the doctor who don't do metric conversions very well, who wouldn't have figured that out. And there's medication mistakes all the time in the United States. You hear about that. But anyway, this story has a happy ending. I did catch it, and she's fine. She actually grew up. She's now a practicing attorney. But let's look at, my daughter's obviously not a veterinary patient, but look at their target that they set for themselves in veterinary medication. They said they want 70% of students to achieve a score of 80 or higher on the dosage calculation section of the final lab exam. And I have to ask myself, did they set that target even high enough? When you think about it, a lot of us have jobs where we're teaching students things where people's lives are going to depend on them. And we're talking about mechanical things like fixing a car properly, or big piece of equipment, with high pressure hydraulics and pneumatics that can explode, and all sorts of medical tasks and sanitation things. So it's good. It's great that we focus in on specific, really important competencies. So what is a good outcome? A good student learning outcome is specific. It focuses on one single competency, not a whole bunch of things. One specific competency. It's measurable. We can actually figure out whether the student can do it or not. It's attainable within time, budget, and conditions. It's results-oriented, and it's targeted to an identified need. Okay? That is what makes a good outcome. When you look at assessing outcomes, and you think about the specificity of a single individual competency, you've got to be careful how you measure that. I don't like to see assessment instruments that say the student will be able to pass exam number 3, which covers chapter 4 through 7 in the textbook. Because does that really tell you anything about whether they can do a specific competency or not? No. There's got to be many competencies in chapters 4 through 7. Now, if they specify this an assessment instrument of questions 5 through 9 on the chapter 3 exam, and those questions all measure whether they can do one particular competency, then that's okay. But you got to, I think one of the hardest things for people who are doing this to be starting out in this is to narrow that down to individual competencies. And calculating a dosage of medication, that's a one single individual competency. So here's characteristics of a good SLO, and it specifies an action by the student. This expresses either a skill, attitude, or value, or quantity of knowledge, observable, measurable, able to be demonstrated, specific, focused, clear, uses active language, and so on and so forth. You can read this for yourself, and I can give you access to this. You have access to this information. There are different levels. There's a knowledge level, an application level, and a problem-solving level. And then we also have some charts here, and these are handouts for our in-person attendees, and we'll let them grab one of those. And these can actually help you to recognize some of the outcomes that you use in your courses, from the very most basic ones to the most sophisticated ones. And for each of these, this offers you some verbs here, because a good student learning outcome usually starts with an action verb. The student is going to observe something, or model something, or discriminate, or alter, or change, or manipulate, or construct, or illustrate, or train, or some type of a verb here. So that'll get you off on the right track. And then on the other side of that handout, and if you're watching us out live over the web, we can send you this. If you just send us an email, we'll send you this via email, this sheet, so you can have one for yourself. Here's some more. These are knowledge outcomes, from the most basic to the most specific, most sophisticated. And you can see, again, this focuses on action verbs, things that you'd be able to do. The ultimate test, again, is can it be assessed? A learning outcome has to answer these three questions: who's supposed to perform it, what action are they to take, and what result must come from their action. Okay? How do we assess the outcomes? Here's some different ways. There's direct assessments, tests, instruments, portfolios, capstone projects, creations, visual representations, and case studies. There's lots of indirect assessments. And for student learning outcomes, it's fairly straightforward. For service areas, it may be a little more tricky for you to actually measure some of your service area outcomes, and we'll talk about that right now. You can use satisfaction data to assess some of your outcomes if you are a service area. We have several instruments that we use every year to measure enrolled student satisfaction, graduate satisfaction, and non-completer, which is people who drop out, satisfaction, and also faculty and staff satisfaction with specific college services. Have you ever used satisfaction survey data to make an improvement in your area? I know we have in institutional effectiveness. We have done that. We had survey data that showed that people wanted more access to data about our college. So as a result, we started pushing out notifications and staff announcements that we call IE briefs, with some interesting tidbits of data that we collect for our college. And we also have put on some professional development sessions about how to use research and data in your area, how to find it, how to access it, what are the different sources. And we're always happy to do that. So we didn't know people wanted that, except that the survey showed that they did, and so we made an improvement based on that. Here is something that shows how important student satisfaction is if you're a service area or if you're an instructional program. Research shows that of the retention factors that we can have an impact on, the number one most important is campus climate. That is making the student feel welcome, that they have a sense of belonging, a sense of pride in their campus, know what's happening. They feel it's a comfortable place. They feel like they're part of a sense of community. That's the number one most important factor towards a student's decision as to whether they're going to persist to graduation or whether they're going to drop out. Overall satisfaction indicators are also really important as well. And satisfaction with specific things, satisfaction with instruction, the responsiveness of specific areas like admissions or financial aid or the library, or any of the student services. Satisfaction with advising, with their course content, feeling like they're being treated fairly and in an unbiased way, and specific services, technology, bookstore, tutoring, all the services that we offer here. And the ultimate satisfaction indicator is whether a student would choose this college if they were starting over again. That's been tied to the ultimate measure of whether they're satisfied and likely to return. So, we have actually two faces of Central Carolina here. And we run enrolled student surveys every year. And for the last couple of years, we've had more than 1,400 students complete this survey. And we see some really wonderful comments about people who are so grateful for the help of specific instructors. They love the quick, easy response, the kindness of the people who work here, efficiency, friendliness, attentiveness, people trying to help them. Everybody was so courteous and kind, very helpful and efficient. People really care about my education. They have no complaints, keep up the good work. My teachers are great. My advisor is wonderful. Everybody's so friendly. I love the smiling faces. Everything is perfect. This school does a great job helping its students. I'm treated with great professionalism. I really appreciate the way the teachers try and help you in any way that they can. And I appreciate how helpful and friendly everyone is to me. Lots of nice comments like this, and we love to see that. And my goal as head of institutional effectiveness is I would like to see all the comments look like this. We just saw how the number one most important factor for a student persisting to complete their degree is their sense of feeling positive, satisfied, like a sense of community. But we also see comments like this. They're fed up with being treated like a nuisance. There's people who on the staff who are extremely poor. I didn't meet anyone friendly in the 3 days I was there. And then this person dropped out after 3 days. They said in the survey, I didn't meet anyone friendly in the 3 days I was there. People are confrontational and rude. Not one single person's been able to make time for me. If you're not a part of your college culture, nobody can figure out how to go about things. These other staff are extremely rude. I don't feel anybody cares if I get the right classes or not. There's still quite a few personnel that do not know how to help students. Again, people are in a hurry, people are rude, and so forth. So, the tale of two Central Carolinas, I like to see them all be green. But to finish off this little cross-section of student comments, here's one that I really love. A student just wrote, I'm proud to be a Central Carolina student. I really want everybody to feel that way, and I know that we all do as faculty and staff here at our college. Unfortunately, over the past few years, our satisfaction data trends from these survey instruments have gone downward. Now, you can see this last one is 2012, and we haven't put the 2013 ones in there yet due to the SACS fifth-year interim reporting process. We're just catching up with that now, but we had some years of declining satisfaction on the non-completer survey, the completer survey, and the aggregate. So we're trying to turn that around, and I really do think that we are. And again, the service areas are the foundation, for our mission, which is empowering people through education and training. And the instructors can't do that without a solid foundation from the service areas. So outcome assessments ask, how are we doing? And we do that in Compliance Assist. We think it's a good tool for all of these reasons that you see here on the screen. People are pretty happy with that system. And we're going to demonstrate it here for you in just a moment. The main thing is it really allows you to focus on connecting your assessment data with your outcome and looking at several years worth of that data so you can see trends and really focus in on using the results to plan and document your future improvements. In 2010, 70% of the community colleges in the Southeast that belong to the SACS organization for accreditation were found to be out of compliance for outcomes assessment because of deficiencies in assessing outcomes or deficiencies in using the results to plan improvements. And we work very hard here at Central Carolina to bring our program up to snuff to help all the areas to do a good job at assessing outcomes. So let's get started. The easiest way to get into Compliance Assist is to go to the Faculty Staff Intranet page. You have to log on to the Faculty Staff Intranet page, and you end up seeing this page right here. And here's a link right here to Compliance Assist. So we're going to go there right now, live. And when you log in to Compliance Assist, you're probably going to get to something like instructional programs. And it's probably going to look like this. So before we look at the actual report, Michelle is going to talk to you a little bit about navigating this site. This is fairly easy to use, and we have little cheat sheet cards for you to take back to your office with you to see how to log in when you are in your office. If you're away from it for a few weeks, it's hard to remember everything. So take it away, Michelle.
Okay, thanks, Linda. So this is your landing page for the outcomes and assessment. And I've kind of modified it a bit so that this menu to the left is more user-friendly. It'll always be available about outcomes and assessment. You know, what is it? If you forget, that's okay. You know, it's right here. And it's different for instructional programs and administrative units like service areas. And you can go back to the home page, and there's a reporting calendar and planning cycle. It gives you tentative due dates for curriculum programs, service areas, ECD, and these are tentative again, so they can change from year to year, and deadlines will be more established, and they'll be given by the IE department. So your end of cycle reports, which is by year, which you can find on your program planning, on your profile, and this is the year that they're due. Then, and how to navigate this site. And back to the home page. So you can go into your curriculum program. Here is the main, the red tab. It'll always be up here, so you'll choose whether you're instructional program, service area, or ECD, and then you'll choose the program that's under that. I've just gone to AA, and you can see the tabs that appear. These are the annual reports, and these are the main pages for each annual report. You can have your program outcome, and you can always click back on these tabs to return back to that menu. The end of cycle program review, which is done every 3 years, and there will be new tabs each year that will copy over your data from previous years. And to edit any of these pages, you would have to go directly into these pages, go up to options, edit item, and you'll see several text boxes. So normally the narrative one is what you want to go to make those edits. You can click right in there and make those edits. And then you'll always want to save and close and check in this item. It's like checking in or checking out a book. You always want to check it in so someone else can check it out later. And your administrator will give reviewer feedback, which you can click here and you can view. This is the assessment rubric, which your administrators will be using, and I won't scroll down here, but there are comments down there for each of your programs that you have access to. And then I think every year we're going to ask that you'll always land, once you get to your program, you'll land on your program profile, which we would always like updated, so your person reporting will always be there. Sometimes they change and we don't know about them, so we'd like to have them here as well. We'd like to know your program description. That doesn't change much, I don't believe. Your mission, they're always here. If you have professional program accreditation, we'd like to know about that process as well. We have blue boxes across all pages and tabs, and those are generally the boxes that we'd like to aim for that you put data in. The IE department will generally put information in the other areas. Are there any questions?
Okay. then
Okay.
We will go ahead and take a look at the annual plan and reporting process. So let's jump on into the Vet Med Tech program, as they kindly allow us to use them as an example every year. So to select your program, you would have to click on instructional programs and then click your program over here. You may not even have a drop-down menu because you may have only access to one program, but you may have a little arrow here where you have to choose one if you have access to more than one program. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to the tab for 2011-12 because they completed a cycle in 2011-12, and so we're going to take a look at what it looks like to have all the data in for 3 years. Their 2012-13 is a new tab. You all should be getting 2013-14 tabs that are going to show up over here within the next few weeks if you don't already have a tab for 2013-14. And that's where you want to make sure that your outcomes are correct for this current academic year. If you want to do any tweaking or changing, you want to do it in the new tab that says 2013-14. And they haven't got theirs yet from the company that puts these together. So when you click on that tab, you see the menu page for the annual reporting process. And you can always go back to the tab and then click into any of these hot links from this menu page. We'll start at the beginning, and the first one looks at the program mission and the program outcomes. At the top of each one of these pages, it shows you the Central Carolina mission right here, which is to empower people through education and training. That's what we're about. And then we fulfill that mission through these 6 institutional goals. Goals 1 through 6, and these are abbreviated, these 6 institutional goals across here. And we are asking you right out of the very first thing to tell us what your program mission is right here, and then to ask and to show us which of the institutional goals is supported by your program mission. So the Vet Med Tech program says their program mission supports students and partnerships. And then over here we ask you to just give us a quick phrase, not even a complete sentence, to tell us how does your program mission support one or more of these institutional goals. And the Vet Med Tech program says that they provide a high quality program in a high demand, well-paying field, and that's how they support students. And that they support the community through externships and providing highly qualified employees in a high demand field, and that's how they support partnerships. They also play a role as a key partner in the regional veterinary community, and that makes a lot of sense. So in that way, they support 2 institutional goals that support our institutional mission. SACS does make sure that we want to make sure that every department and program in this college is pulling in the same direction so that we're all really functioning under the same broad institutional mission and goals. Down here you have a list of program outcomes. Your program outcomes are already established if you're a curriculum program. You have a list of them somewhere. Really, I think they're all in here now. I think everybody's program has their program outcomes already listed in here. And the reason some of them are highlighted in yellow are those are the ones that have been identified as areas that these planners are going to work on for their student learning outcomes this year. So that's the first page. The second page, we're getting rid of the staffing overview. We're actually calculating this a different way. It turned out to be confusing for chairs because there's a lot of overlap between departments for staffing. So you're not going to see that anymore. That page is going away. That brings us to our first student learning outcome, student learning outcome number 1. And it gives some additional instructions up here at the top of the page for some guidance. You scroll down a little bit, and here you can see is your student learning outcome that you're going to measure for this 3-year cycle. And they chose theirs to be have a basic understanding of the use of medical terms and their relationship to anatomy, physiology, disease, and treatment of various conditions. And then we ask you to tell which program outcome does that fall under, and it's this one. And which course do you teach that in? It's this one. Sometimes it's many courses or multiple courses. And how are you going to measure that? And they said there is an anatomy midterm and final that focuses entirely on that terminology. And their target is that 75% of students will achieve an average score of 80% or higher at both the midterm and the final grading points for the course. And here you see is where they put their data in, the blue boxes. As Michelle said, you just got to aim for the blue. The first year that they measured this, they had 54% of their students achieve the target at midterm and 89% at the end of the year. The next year they had the same numbers, and the next year they had 64% and 81%. So they did not meet their goal of 75% of students achieving it at both, even though more than 75% achieved it by the end of the course. And so down here, this is the most important part. Explain how the assessment results are being used to improve the program, or what we call close the loop. And here, Kim Browning talks about all sorts of things that they're doing. They're changing the lab schedule to give them more concentrated lab time. They're instituting an early warning system. They're having them work with academic assistance center and tutors. So they're doing some different things there to try and improve student learning, and then they measure it again the next year to see if that worked. So here's their next outcome. Recognize and properly define the root words, prefixes, suffixes, and terminals covered in this course. And over the course of 3 years, they had 94, 96, and 100%. Achieving that outcome. You see they have up to 6. I think they do have 6 of them. This one, be able to properly prepare tissue and fluid specimens for transport to a diagnostic lab. They were not happy with their students' performance there, so what they did was they had an employee from the laboratory come into as a guest speaker to address the students on the topic and demonstrate how to do it. And they thought that was more meaningful to the students, that the lab rep was there to answer the questions, and that did result in an increase in their already high success rate. This is about recognizing general types of drugs. This is all sorts of different things here. This is the one that we talked about earlier, calculating dosages for veterinary medications. And they have a 97% the first year, and then 100% students meeting the target by the second year. And in order to help students succeed better, they pulled calculation examples from 3 different sources and provided them to students on additional worksheets and to practice the skills. So they're focusing on a single competency and how they can improve student learning in that competency. The next page is an administrative outcome, and this is optional. You don't have to have administrative outcomes. But in Vet Med Tech, they said they wanted to improve faculty advisor contact time, response time with advisees. So they said faculty advisors will improve response time to advisee requests. And the reason they did that is they said data shows that an increased access to advisors improves retention rates and student satisfaction. And they wanted to review the fall 2011 evaluations, and they wanted to see an increase from the student satisfaction and response time up from 80%. And they did. They had 80% that first year, and the next year they went to 91%, and they did that by posting office hours and offering incentives and implementing an early warning system and doing all sorts of things to try and enhance that advisor-advisee contact. So that's the idea of an administrative outcome, which is again optional. So we'll go through the other ones of those. And now we get to what's called the criteria for quality and viability. And these are some data that are in specific categories that have been identified as helping to make sure that your program is of high quality and sustainable over long term. The first one is FTE enrollment, full-time equivalent enrollment. You can see that institutional effectiveness will put this data in here for you. All you have to do is aim for this blue box and comment on it. And even that is optional for most of these things. So for FTE, we give you 4 years worth of data. You can see that the FTEs for this program went from 107 to 128 to 137 to 160 over 4 years. So they're increasing their FTE enrollment. And they commented that student success and retention is central to what we do. You know, again, that is optional. The next one is unduplicated headcount. And you can see 4 years worth of data there, and it didn't comment on that one, and that's fine. Recruiting and applicants is not really applicable to them because they have a selective enrollment program, but typically for most programs you would see the number of people who applied to your program for this particular fall entry, and of those, how many actually enrolled, and they would give you a percentage known as your yield rate. Here's how many credentials you awarded this past year, how many certificates, diplomas, and degrees. And then you can comment on that. Here's your persistence, your fall-to-fall persistence, and retention activities and strategies. This column right here is actually the total. These things all kind of add up to this. These are the, how many enrollees did you have last fall? Well, how many of them came back this fall? Well, how many of them didn't come back because they already graduated, they earned their credential? Well, how many of them came back and earned a credential? Add these all up, that's the total number that persisted by how many there were last fall, and that gives you your persistence. Your target is 50%, and you can see they had 67%, and 71, 68, and 75. So they've met their target each year for that. I should mention that is the one area, if you're an instructional program, that Lisa Chapman is looking to see everybody comment on. This is the one that's not optional, retention activities and strategies used to retain students. So Lisa Chapman would like to see from every curriculum program what you're doing to increase retention. They're using an early warning system. They did that before we had a VSO, and they are using incentives to increase advisor-advisee contact and so forth. Here's passing rate on licensure and certification exams, not applicable to every program, but you can see they had 100% pass rate on all their licensure and certifications exams each of the last 4 years. Then we're asking you to address the key topics that you talked about in your last advisory committee meeting. What did your advisors recommend? What are you planning to do in response to their recommendations? And then here you upload your minutes from your advisory committee meeting. And the way you do that is very simple. You go, and in fact, I don't think I've showed you yet how to get in and modify any of these. So let's take a look. Let's say you want to add your information and your advisory committee minutes here. You would go up to the top right-hand corner and hover over where it says options, and then go down and click where it says edit item. That'll open this item up in editable form. And then you can click inside any of these text boxes and you can add your information, whatever you want to write. And then when you're done, you'll save it. If you're ready to upload your supporting documents or your minutes, you just scroll down a little bit farther where it says supporting documents. You click upload file, and it will allow you to browse on your computer, and you can find your file on the desktop or in your My Documents or wherever you've stored your minutes. Click upload and it will show up right here. When you're done editing or uploading, you come back up here and you click save and close. Then you click check it in, and then you move on to the next thing. So the next part of the report is departmental discussions. You should be getting together with the faculty and staff in your department at least once a year, and your program administrators want to know, did you discuss these items? And could you please attach the minutes to your department discussion? The next template shows the progress on your writing works assessments. So that is the QEP, the Quality Enhancement Plan. That's this year it's transitioning from from just being the SACS QEP, which had to meet certain criteria. We're transitioning it into being an ongoing, sustainable, institutional program. And we're not quite sure what that's going to look like yet as we move forward. But in the past, this is where we put all the results from the assessments of the writing committees. And then here you had the opportunity to comment on those results and what you would like to do to try and improve writing the next year. Here's your brag sheet right here, accomplishments and innovations. And here's where you get to talk about any new programs or courseworks, new methods, processes, new technology or funding, new equipment or facilities, new recruiting efforts, other innovations or other accomplishments, and just document all the great things that you've done for your department or your program this year. The next one, and this is the last template, it's for you to be able to request equipment or space or new faculty that you need in response to the evidence that's shown in this data here. So this is a great time to think about what do you really need to be doing your job. Do you need new equipment to use to train your students on, or you need more space, or what is it that you need? And because what you do is you reach back into your data and your previous templates or your previous year's report to be able to show evidence that you need that. So you talk about what item you're requesting, how much is it going to cost, which data or information in the previous sections suggests that this is needed, what's your evidence, and how will it enhance student learning or improve your program. A good example of this is the electronics engineering technology saw that their students were going to interview at a particular large company, and they were not getting jobs because they did not know how to use a new type of oscilloscope. And the reason they didn't know how to use that is the college didn't have that new type of oscilloscope. So the program leadership was able to use that information to justify and provide evidence that we needed to actually purchase that. And we did. They allocated funds for that, but you have to have evidence as to why that's important. So again, that is your outcomes and assessment annual plan and report. You lay out these outcomes by October 31st for the academic year, and then you assess them as the year goes on. And then you report out on them at the end of the academic year in late spring, early summer, for the whatever the reporting deadline is for that year. You log back in here and you report your results and you reflect on those and how you could possibly improve in the future. So at this point, does anybody have any questions about this process? No? Okay. I hope that we've covered everything. I think that we have. Can you think of anything that we've missed here, Michelle?
You can always contact the IE department if you ever think of anything.
Absolutely.
Michelle or Linda.
If you have a question or you just want to bounce some ideas about this off anybody, absolutely do. Please, we always welcome your contact. As Michelle said, you can contact us anytime. Michelle Bodley or Linda Scoletti. We are here to facilitate this process and to serve you and helping meet our students' needs in this way. So, okay. Again, you would want to aim for your tab. And let's pull up one that has a 2013 tab. AS does, don't they? Okay, you're going to look for the tab that says 2013-14 Outcomes and Assessment Plan. Here's where you're going to want to tweak your student learning outcomes for the current year. And you got to make sure that you measure those and that you keep your data and report it. I guess you don't really have to keep it once you report it into Compliance Assist. One nice thing about Compliance Assist is you can log in any day of the year, any time of the day, from anywhere that you have internet. You calculate your grades at home at midnight on a Sunday night. You can log into Compliance Assist right then from your house and plop your assessment data in there, and then it's done. You can also upload any kind of supporting information that that shows those grades if you'd like. A lot of people like to keep track of that in here. So it's nice that you can access this. You don't have to wait till the report is due and then pull up the form. You can actually access this all throughout the year and anywhere that you have internet any time of day or night. So, okay. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of this Outcomes and Assessment training session. Again, if you do have a question, we welcome your call at any time, and Michelle and I look forward to working with you as we move through this academic year for your program planning. Thank you very much for attending.